appreciate you all coming here tonight. I know you're all very busy. Just like last time, I'll take you through kind of the why we're here and the here at the end of the stick of makes you eligible for those grants and pre-disaster and post-disaster to implement the projects that you're going to be reviewing or adding to your plan here following this meeting. And then I will talk you through the worksheets step by step so that you know what kind of information we're looking for. And so when you go back to your communities or your schools, you know kind of the steps to take when filling them out. I will repeat myself several times tonight. If you get lost or have questions or want to talk with one of us after the meeting, do not hesitate to call me, contact Kayla, send us an email. We're here to help. So that's why Troy and the county have hired JEO to facilitate and assist through this process to make your jobs as easy as possible, to ensure that the plan checks all those boxes for FEMA, to ensure that you are an approved plan and are eligible for those FEMA grants, but really to be a more resilient community. So that's why we're here. We are recording. I'm going to go ahead and get to my housekeeping. We are recording this meeting and doing a live YouTube video. So just be aware, microphone is on. Folks are joining us from home. If they had other issues or illnesses come up, they can watch this in their free time. You can feel free to share this meeting link as well with any of your community members. So if they do have questions or about what this process is, feel free to share that information. Did provide those hard copy worksheets. They're also available online, so if you need extra copies or want to fill out the worksheet on a Word document, you can do that. The link there is a shortened link, so it'll take you directly to the drive. But definitely download that worksheet. Don't fill it out on the Google Drive, otherwise we won't know what changes you make. And the YouTube Live, the YouTube video, my understanding is the county's YouTube channel, so it should be available there. Okay, introductions, grants overview, and then worksheet discussion. That's what we're talking about here tonight. And then we'll talk about the end of this planning process and what to expect here as Troy just explained that adoption process that we'll take you through here step by step. Have plenty of time for question and answer. I anticipate getting done here before the top of the hour. If you want to stick around, fill out worksheets afterwards or ask any questions, coordinate with each other on anything, you can certainly do that. I'm here to assist in that questions and answers. If you need to go, you can understand that too. So just want to kind of let you know what the timeline's looking like here tonight. Kayla, unfortunately, is sick and wasn't able to join us tonight, but I'm sure many of you have gotten emails from her or gotten a phone call. She's another really fantastic resource. She's my lead planner on this. So together we're working on this project and here to help you through ensuring that we're giving the information that FEMA requires for your hazard mitigation plan. If you did not, if for some reason I missed you, be sure to sign in here tonight. If you're joining us online, either in real time or later, if you're viewing this video after tonight, February 16th, send us an email or give us a call at JEO, and we'll be sure to document your attendance so that we can, get you into the plan and ensure that your comments are populated into the plan as well. Okay, so last time, for those that weren't able to attend or those that did, just a quick refresher of where we've been and where we're going. So last meeting back in October, we talked about our hazards of greatest concern, and we had that list of approximately 16 hazards, and we're talking natural hazards and man-made hazards, right? So tornadoes, flooding, winter storms, summer storms, but also terrorism, chemical spills, public health, pandemic disease. These are all different types of hazards that we're discussing in this plan and assessing through this process. And at that last meeting, we talked about taking that list of 16 hazards and then identifying which ones keep us up at night. Which ones are we not prepared for? Which ones would devastate our community if, a tornado came through, we don't have adequate shelter, maybe we don't have backup generators, maybe flooding's a concern because we don't have appropriate drainage to get the water away from critical facilities. So kind of taking through that step-by-step assessment of what hazards are at greatest concern, greatest risk to our community. And then tonight, we're connecting the dots to, okay, now what can we do about it? What are our mitigation strategies? What are those small or large projects that we can be doing to reduce risk and be a more resilient community or resilient school district? We also talked about critical facilities. So if you are new to this planning process, you had to identify new critical or identify those critical facilities first time around. If you participated 5 years ago, we had that original list and just asked you to update them. And tonight, you'll just be reviewing that list again to ensure that that map is accurate. And also talk about integration of your planning documents. So your comprehensive plan, your ordinances, building codes, any drainage studies or other special studies that you may have done that are relevant to this planning process to hazard mitigation. We asked you questions about those and put that information into your plan. So you did a lot of work that last week, a lot of work. I hope you'll find tonight it's a much easier process, less information being asked of you, but definitely taking a broader view of, okay, what can we do to solve this problem? That's really what we're aiming at, is that mitigation strategy. So what you have in front of you is an updated version of your profile if you provided information at that first meeting. So definitely review that information that we've updated, ensure we captured it correctly, and if there's anything that we need to change in there, feel free to mark it up and we'll make those changes. Reviewing your mitigation actions, we'll talk about that, identifying any new ones if necessary, and then we'll talk about plan maintenance. So those are the key items I'll take you through with those worksheets here this evening. Okay, so one of the big reasons why we're here going through this planning process, FEMA recognizes this is a time-intensive process, and you're doing a risk analysis and identifying those projects, and they're like, okay, you've done all that work, you understand what needs to be done in your community. We realize time and budget are finite resources, and we don't have all the money in the world to do the things we need to do to be a resilient community. So thankfully, FEMA has grant programs to now that you can apply for to help pay for those projects that you identify in your plan. Those projects, those grant programs generally will pay for 75% of the total cost of the project if you end up getting it awarded. That can add up to be kind of a big chunk of money. If we're talking about $1 million project, $750,000 of it will be reimbursed to you. So while there are a lot of, the application process can be quite intense. Has anyone applied for a hazard mitigation grant program, BRIC, or previously pre-disaster mitigation or flood mitigation assistance? Any community, Troy County level? Okay, that's quite all right. Many communities haven't had an opportunity to apply for these, this grant money. What I will say though, that if your community is eager and needs to get these projects done, but don't have the resources like money to get it done, definitely recommend reaching out to the state. I'll have some contact information here in just a moment to get that ball rolling so that, it's not an automatic given, but by having the plan completed and approved is that most important first step to being eligible for those. First one on your left, Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, or HMGP. That one is definitely the easiest out of the three, I would say, to apply for because you're only competing with your neighbors within the state of Iowa. Only the residents within the state of Iowa can apply for those grant funds. But the catch is, the only way that those funds are available is unfortunately a disaster disaster occurs in your state. So it is triggered by a presidential disaster declaration. So like the derecho that occurred last summer, presidential disaster declaration was made, and I believe it's 20% of the funds are set aside, of the disaster dollars are set aside to fund this program. And then Iowa Homeland Security Emergency Management then kind of takes a look at, okay, what mitigation projects do we need to prioritize? Where do we want to send the monies to? Who's asking for money? What are they trying to fund? Typically, it starts with sending in a notice of interest form to the state so that they have a list of projects. And you don't have to be in that disaster area. I want to make that clear. You do not have to be in the declared disaster area to be eligible for those funds. Anyone in the state can apply for them once that money becomes available. So definitely recommend, if there are funds available, reach out to the state and find out how do I get started. 75% paid for, 25% cost share. However, State of Iowa is fantastic. Yes.
I've written other federal grants before that were similar to this, and we were able to use fair market value in-kind contributions as a part of the match. Is that applicable in this case as well?
Great question and point. Yes. In-kind, depending on the project, is definitely applicable.
Thank you.
Yeah. And what's great about the state of Iowa is the state will pitch in 10% of that 25% cost share. So the local community or district's only responsible for 15%, and that can be either cash or in-kind.
Thank you.
Yeah. Open application period, so it's as long as the funds are available, which usually is up to a year after the disaster is declared, you can apply for those funds. And they are accepting notice of interest forms now. I want to say through April. They have a couple pots of money available because of the derecho and also because of COVID. The president has allowed this grant program to funnel in money to all the states so that they can do mitigation, whether it's for public health mitigation or other types of disaster mitigation. And again, that's kind of set up, determined by the state emergency management to decide what's going to be prioritized. But last I checked, they had $19 million to award, which is a significant amount of money. So that is a great program. The other two are also excellent, just there tends to be a lot more competition because these are generally nationwide grant programs. They open up in the fall time period, usually September every year, for BRIC, which stands for Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. It's in its second year, and it replaced the pre-disaster mitigation grant program. What's really great about this is they take 6% of federal funds post-disaster across the entire United States. So all of the disaster declarations that are made from hurricanes, wildfires, flooding, you name it, earthquakes, in that year, and they set aside 6%. 6% doesn't sound like a lot, but when we're talking about multi-billion-dollar disasters, it adds up fast. So in 2021, that application just closed, and they had $1 billion available to allocate. They had $5 billion in projects submitted. So unfortunately, 1 to 5 will potentially get awarded. But you're not eligible unless you have a plan approved and unless you submit an application. Again, same idea, 75-25% cost share, but in-kind match does apply to all of these grant programs. Application period, as I said, typically opens in September. Your grants usually due by December so that the state can review it and then submit it to FEMA in January. The other unfortunate thing about particularly BRIC and flood mitigation assistance is because of the volume of projects that are submitted at the federal level, it takes months or even a year for them to review those applications, prioritize them, ensuring they're checking all of those boxes, coordinating with the state, and then funneling the money to the state, and then the state funneling it down to the local community. BRIC from 2020 has yet to be awarded unless I was ahead of Nebraska. I know in Nebraska, we have BRIC money from 2020 that hasn't been allocated yet. So my point being, if you have a project that needs to start in a month or in 6 months even, BRIC and FMA are not the programs for you. HMGP is a better bet if you need a faster turnaround time. So it's really important to be thinking 18 months ahead, or even 2 years ahead to get that application ready, submitted, approved, and the money to be obligated to your community. BRIC tends to be similar to HMGP. A wide range of types of projects can be funded through those. Flood mitigation assistance, however, as the title states, it's for flooding projects only. Your community needs to be a part of the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP, to be eligible. It has a much smaller pot of money, but it's also focusing on a much narrower type of hazard. $160 million in 2021 was available. This opens up application period the same time as BRIC, so September usually, and then submit in December, January, and then it can take 12 to 18 months before funds are allocated. Contact information for all three, I would start with Dusty at Iowa Homeland Security. Troy can also get you, as a good starting point as well. Any questions about the programs? The other thing I do just want to mention briefly, and I know this table is really hard to read, but the point being, there are a list of popular mitigation projects here on the left, and then what funding program is eligible, so HMGP, post-fire HMGP, building resilient infrastructure in communities, and flood mitigation assistance. But down here under item 2, capability capacity building, this, while it's been around for a while, it's been called different things, and particularly this project scoping and advanced assistance. It's been around for as long as hazard mitigation assistance funds have been available. But what the BRIC program has done is put an added emphasis on those things, on building capacity and project scoping. And what do I mean by project scoping? What that is your community knows you have a hazard problem, flooding, recurring flooding, a need for a safe room maybe, but particularly flooding is the one that obviously comes to mind. But you don't know how to fix that problem. You know there's a problem, but you don't know what the best engineering solution is. And you need to hire someone, a consultant, or an engineer to do a study to understand what is the best solution, where's the problem really coming from, and what are the best ways to fix it, and what will meet your benefit cost analysis. This project scoping will fund that process. So you can get money to even do like a phase 1, okay, what are we gonna do about this? What is the best way of doing it? And then once that study is done, then you can apply for a proper project to put in that physical, upsized culvert or a detention pond or whatever the case may be, based on the analysis that was done. So you don't have to have all the answers. That's okay. But even just funding to find the answers can be difficult. So FEMA has found a way to fund that. So definitely want to make sure that you're aware that's available. That being said, FEMA's great, have lots of great grant programs, lots of money. However, there are other grant programs and other ways to fund your projects. And so keep that in mind that sometimes the best funding mechanism could be a different grant program, whether it's a different federal program, more local state program. Even we found private foundations are looking to, renewing, putting money into our local communities. And so just thinking outside the box, I think, is what I'm trying to get at is, yes, Scott?
How much of a reporting burden is there with these grants? I know some grants are very light on reporting, other ones take you days and weeks, and it's just like a full-time job reporting on these grants.
Yeah.
So these ones you're talking about, how heavy is that burden?
So I can't speak to all of these. What I can say to the FEMA program, there are quarterly reports. What they have also done, particularly in the BRIC program, I know for sure, is they you can apply for 100% reimbursement for time spent on grant management. So they realize it can be quite time intensive, but even then, I don't want to say it's not that heavy of a lift, but quarterly reports aren't too bad, especially if you're working with a contractor that sets up the invoices correctly. The other ones, anyone have experience with CDBG that can?
I've done those before. I was just curious overall, like for, USDA grants, for instance, I've written a few of those. And
Yeah. It's a really good point, and when you do your research, speak with your neighbors, find out if they have experience with them, what is that time that it's gonna take once a project is funded. And some of these have different cost share. Some are better, some are not as good, but you get maybe something better in return. Maybe some of these are 60-40, but maybe there's less boxes to check. Maybe you don't have to meet a benefit cost analysis or ratio like you do with the FEMA ones. So, yeah.
it's just like you get a $10,000 grant and it's basically $20,000 worth of wages to get the $10,000 grant.
Yeah, exactly. And they're breathing down your back, and it's like, oh, was this even worth it?
But I suppose that's different with every one of those offerings.
Yeah, absolutely. So, reaching out to these individual programs, calling the state, getting their, or really talking with Scott or other your neighbors that can truly tell you an honest opinion of the process, because I think that's worth a lot more. So those are some really good points. And if you can fund them locally, that's always a better bet, but again, I realize finances are finite. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, very good. So now I'm going to take you through those worksheets. They are due March 18th. That will ensure that we stay on schedule, and I'll take you through that schedule here at the end of this slideshow. If, however, you get to the 18th, we've been emailing you, reminding you, hey, you haven't sent yours in yet, just say, hey, I know, stuff came up, we got sick, whatever, life happens, we realize that. Just let us know that it's on your to-do list and I plan to get it to you the following week, that's fine. Otherwise, Kayla or myself or Claire or someone in my office will be calling you and be like, hey, do we need to set up a meeting? We can help you out. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So as I've already said, this packet in front of you, if you provided information from round one, will be an updated version of the profile from last October. Anything in red or highlighted in yellow is information that we need from you or want you to provide to us. So definitely we try to make it as easy and stand out as possible so that when you go through the document, it pops out at you. If you're doing this in Word, which I can totally understand that might be easier for many of you, make sure the track changes is turned on, and so we can more easily identify what changes you've made. But feel free to mark it up, with a pen. Send us a copy by email, or feel free to mail it to us. If you mail it to us, though, definitely make a personal copy for yourself. We have had instances where it gets lost in the mail, and then it's like, you did all the work and it's gone. So snap pictures or whatever you have to do before you mail it to us. Definitely encourage that. Okay, so we're going to be talking about reviewing your critical facilities, updating your mitigation actions from 2017, identifying new ones, and then a new section that we added to this plan for 2022 is plan maintenance. So I'll take you through that here in just a minute. Again, I know this is kind of hard to see, but the essence here is essentially, if you participated in 2017, which many of you did, you will see towards the end of the document these tables, and give us If it wasn't, that's fine. FEMA doesn't require you to complete any of these. You either decide to keep it or remove it. Do not feel obligated to keep all of the projects that are listed in your plan today. If you feel like it just doesn't make sense, I don't know what that project is, remove it. If you feel there's a better way to mitigate that hazard or you have a different solution, remove it and put a new one in. Sometimes less is more. And keep in mind, this is a 5-year plan. What is truly possible? If you were given all the money and all the time in the world, what can we appropriately do in a 5-year time frame? So, when you're going through those projects and there are, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, so if you remove a plan, or a component project out of your plan, then FEMA money becomes available for that at a later date? Does it have to be in this plan?
That is a great question. So what she's asking is, if you remove a project or forget to put a project in and we adopt the plan and something happens 2 years from now and you realize, oh, we want money for that project, but it's not in our plan. Contact Troy, contact JEO, either one, and there is a very simple process to amend your plan. So you can make changes to your plan at any time. And that's where plan maintenance becomes very important. That I'll get to here in just a moment. The most critical aspect of all of this is being a part of the process now. Because you can't jump into this process 2 years from now. Only during the 5-year updates can you jump in. But every year, and again, I'll get to this in a minute, when you review your plan or you realize you need to add a project because you want to go after funding, essentially what that process is we have a letter form that you provide the details of that project and say, we want to add this project on page whatever, of section whatever, please, let us know when you've received this and it's been filed. And it's as simple as that. And so they just file it with your plan and that's it. Yeah, great question. So again, don't stress out if you don't have to think of everything tonight. Just being part of the process is the most important step. But if you need to make any changes to these actions, please make them. So for instance, you have, this is just an example, community shelter or safe rooms as a project. And you realize you want, the project title or description, I should say, was a bit too broad. It just said, oh, we needed a storm shelter, but we don't know where. But now we know we want to have a community center. So put off to the side or say, we need one at the community center. We also found out the cost isn't $250,000 anymore, it's $400,000. Inflation, or we need a bigger safe room, or community has grown, whatever the case may be. Approximately it's gone up in cost. Timeline, instead of 3 to 5 years, we're getting started tomorrow or already underway. So we're gonna get this done really fast, change it to 1 year. Again, the point being, mark up any of that action as needed. Priority level, because we're gonna get it done faster, is now high rather than medium. We're keeping the project, and then that last box is status. What is the current status of this project? What we're looking for is, if nothing's been done, just say not started. That's fine. But if something has occurred, you're in the early planning stages, you're getting bids, or you're applying for grants, or you're under construction, or a completion date, put that information in there. That's really helpful. It can be very general or high level description of the status. But again, if it's not started, that's fine. Even if it's just we're getting a team together, just whatever you think you're at. I appreciate that information. If you're identifying new projects, whether you're a returning participant in the plan or a new participant in the plan, this is where we have some blank tables available to you. And it's essentially filling out the same information, but maybe they're blank, so you just have to provide it from the get-go. The actions, the mitigation actions that we particularly encourage you to put down are ones that you know you want to go after grant funding. They're on your capital improvements plan or any other type of projects that you know are coming down your 1 in 6 year that you know are going to be done. I encourage you to put them down as a new action. Also review all of your other actions if you have some in your plan already, and ensure that the priority of those actions makes sense. So they can't all be high-level priority projects. Some are going to be high, some are going to be medium, and some are going to be low. Like, we know eventually we're going to get to that project, but we need to get our high and medium ones done first. Or we need to build some consensus, in our community that this is an important action. We just aren't there yet. So that's all good information to be thinking about when you're thinking about priority level. And also reach out to your maintenance, your utilities. Those folks are constantly doing mitigation every day, or they're aware they could be doing a lot more mitigation, but they don't have the funds to do that. So ask them for their wish list and pick those highest priority projects. You can't put them all in there, so I'm sure many of them will have like a dozen projects they want to do, but what's one or two that if they could get funded tomorrow, would they do first? So those are just some key resources or paths to identify those new actions. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is look at your risk assessment, your hazard prioritization section, where we talk about each of your hazards. And last time, hopefully you provided some information of understanding, it's constantly flooding at First and Main Street. Well, okay, let's connect our mitigation projects to that hazard, to that particular problem. So by reviewing that hazard prioritization, something might pop out at you that's like, oh yeah, I remember that, that's a concern, that's a problem. We need to do something about that. Even if the action is just like, we need to do a study to figure out more of what's going on. That is an adequate project to put down. If you're still stuck, FEMA has some really great resources for you just to kind of get the gears going. It's okay to copy what other people have done. This is why FEMA's put it out. There are 2 resources particularly that are good. It's an older one, it's from 2013, but a lot of it's still applicable. Mitigation ideas, and if you just search for FEMA mitigation ideas, it should pop up in Google, but we have a link here, and this PowerPoint will be on the Google Drive if you need to download this. But download that document. What's cool about that document is it's organized by hazard, so you can go directly to the tornado hazard, or to the flooding hazard, or earthquake. It's primarily focused on our natural hazards, but that's a good resource. The other one that did come out 2 years ago, or 18 months, is the Mitigation Action Portfolio. What's really cool about that one is they take actual real life examples that other communities have done and been successful at doing, and some of those key things that it's hitting those check boxes for, some of those community lifelines or critical needs that they're mitigating for. And so you can read those stories and understand kind of their thought process of why they put those actions in and why FEMA kind of highlighted it as a best practice. So those are some really good resources there. Talk with your neighbors, reach out to Troy. I'm sure Troy will have some really good ideas and know of some of the needs of your communities as well. When you're going through your new mitigation action tables, there are just a few things. I break it down for you step by step here of each of those rows to fill in. They're pretty descriptive. So mitigation action name. What is the general name of the project? Safe room or backup generator. It can be very, 1 or 2 words, 3 words, that's fine. Description, give us a bit more detail about that project. So where is it located? What is it for? What maybe hazards are we trying to address? Those types of things. So backup generator is needed at the lift station and long. These projects, especially like for a generator, can be for multiple locations, so that's fine. Estimated cost, best guess. I realize, you know, maybe you have just no idea, or it could vary on location. Give us a ballpark, and even then, if you're still a little stuck, we have a general idea of what some of these things do cost, so I wouldn't get too hung up on that. I see my cable's a little off there, but the local funding. So where will the funds come from? So we're not talking about what grant will you apply to fund it, but how will you pay for that 25% or 10 or 15% cost share? So utility department funds is where, for a backup generator on this example. It can be general funds or maybe a bond or whatever that local ability to fund that local cost share, that's what we're looking for there for local funding. Timeline, so when will the project be completed? Again, this is a ballpark, unless you've already started the project and know when construction will be done, that's a different thing. But generally, if you need to go after funding, it's gonna be that 2 to 5 year range. And if it's longer than that, if it's 5 or more, because it's a lower priority or other things need to happen first, that's okay too. So just select whatever timeline is appropriate. Then we come to priority, high, medium, or low. Essentially what we're kind of trying to emphasize here with that one is do feasibility review. What I mean is, are all the things in place that you can start tomorrow? Or do we need to do, ensure that the community supports the project? Have we done any environmental, reviews that need to happen before we can start on the project? Do we need to get some permits, hire a contractor? Where are we at? And if a lot of those things you need to do a lot yet. Maybe that priority level will be a little lower so that we can build up momentum. Or it's a high priority because it is such a critical need that we need to get it done as soon as possible. So no matter where we're at in that process, we're gonna put all resources towards getting that done. So kind of just think through that, and again, not all of them can be high, and hopefully not all of them will be low. Kind of take a broader view at, if you have 5 to a dozen actions, make sure that they all kind of work together. Lead agency, what department or position will kind of ensure that that project keeps moving ahead? So I don't want any specific names, but like if your utility superintendent will be your primary person overseeing that project, maybe it's whoever your grant manager will be your project, facilitator. Who will that primary person be? Mayor, whatever the person might be. Put that position or department in there. And then lastly, status. Where is the project at? So again, the same idea of, not started, we're in the planning stages, we're applying for funding, we've broken ground, whatever the case may be. And again, ensure that as best as possible, that your mitigation actions are connecting directly back to your hazard prioritization and your risks that you discussed at that last meeting. So review that little narrative for all those hazards that are provided in your plan so that we're focusing on those hazards of greatest concern first. Questions about mitigation actions? Okay. The last thing I will say, the only requirement when it comes to mitigation actions to be considered a participant is you have one mitigation action. That's it. You only have to have one. If you want to have more, that's fantastic. But you don't have to have 50 or even 20. I'd say a good number is anywhere between 3 to 12 actions. And it really depends on the size of your community, what's feasible in a 5-year time frame. And what are your capabilities? Do you have a lot of staff to do multiple projects at one time? Plan maintenance. So we've learned over the last couple of years in working with FEMA in these plans that they really want to see more feedback and more ownership at the local level, that we identify for projects? What did we identify as hazards of greatest concern? And updating them if necessary. So as you've already asked, Diane, you know, how do we add additional projects, or how do we maybe, heck, go back 3-4 years ago, did we ever think COVID-19 was gonna happen, the pandemic? No, no one, you know, I'm sure public health could have said, we could have told you different, but, you know, a pandemic hits or a derecho comes through and it really impacts our community and exposes a risk or vulnerability we weren't aware of before. That's where the review and plan maintenance comes into play. And updating, adding new information into your plan, and identifying new actions. Maybe you complete actions, so you have to add new ones in. That's fantastic. But if we're impacted by a hazard, what projects do we need to add to go after funding because a new risk or exposure was identified? So we're trying to get at is these should be living documents. Ideally, we're not opening them back up every 5 years. If, you know, we're looking at these once a year, ideally, when we get back again in 5 years' time, we'd be like, I know exactly what we need to update. Or, you know, here Becky, we've documented everything that we know what our risks are. Here's the projects that we've done. Here are the projects that we want to do. These are our changes. I'll see you again in 5 years. That would be fantastic. Troy would be just hooping and hollering. He'll be so excited. So the idea with these questions is who's going to be responsible or ensuring, who's that champion to make sure that this doesn't get forgotten? Ensuring that we're opening it up. Maybe it's during grant period every fall. You know, we need to go after grant funds. Or maybe it's when you're doing your capital budget. Whatever makes sense for your community. You identify that. And we put in some information here. There's a space for you to identify what makes sense for when ideally you would review the document. Hopefully it's more than one person that's responsible for it. Maybe it's your entire council. Maybe it's the fire department. Maybe, you know, whatever group of people that can be, you know, get together and not have it all on one person's shoulder to ensure that that review gets done and what information needs to be updated. And then lastly, how will the public be involved? So, hazard mitigation planning and the plan itself, it's a public living document. It's a public process. Anyone can review the plan, provide comments, provide input. Ideally, you know, the best way to probably do this from FEMA's point of view and from my point of view is during one of your council meetings, board meetings. Just say, hey, you know, I'm going to be reviewing the plan. If you have any comments or questions about what's in the plan, you know, give me a call, send me an email. I'll be doing a write-up here, and by the time we meet again in a month. And that's sufficient. Putting it on your social media channels, putting a notice in your city hall or wherever, you know, public notices are put, that's an easy way to just say, hey folks, we're doing a review of our plan. Here's a way to provide comment. So don't have to overthink it. Just how will the public be noticed or notified that you're going through that review? Okay. This next step is for those that haven't completed their plan integration worksheets from last time. So if you have completed it, you can just tune me out for a couple minutes. If you did not complete the plan integration from last time, you'll have a separate worksheet, and it will take you through step by step. That first step being identifying what plans do you have in place for your community or your school district. Just check yes or no if you have them. Any of the plans that you do have in place, and if you only have one, that's fine. You don't have to have all of these, but any of the plans that you do have, then go to that applicable page to fill out the questions or answer those yes or no questions for that particular plan. So if you have a comprehensive plan or a master plan, you check yes. You'll go to that page and just answer all of those questions for that. So just go through it step by step. If you have any questions about plan integration though, or if you have something, a special plan that we don't have listed, we would greatly appreciate a copy of it, just so we can pull that relevant information into your hazard mitigation plan. School districts do have a similar worksheets laid out exactly the same. We just try to make the planning mechanisms applicable to a school or other special district. Any immediate questions on plan integration? The idea also with this is, as a community, we want to make sure all of our documents are going in the same direction. We're rowing together. We're not working against one another, saying one thing in one document and saying something completely different in another. So how can we ensure that we're all working together, and how in our other plans, so comprehensive plan or ordinances, are we taking or information from our hazard mitigation plan and putting it into those documents as well, so that as a community, it's weaving a thread through everything that we do. So that's the idea behind the plan integration. Okay, worksheets due March 18th. Again, give us a call, send us an email. Most likely, we're working on your plan already, and I have your document open, so it is not a problem. That's what we're here for. So even if it's after hours, if you're working a 9-to-5 job and you're doing this after hours, we can schedule time to do that. That's not a problem. Kayla is the best first point of contact. Kay Von Dropcheck at jeo.com. However, my business card is up on the table too. There's our mailing address in Lincoln for Kayla. But again, just I don't like to spin your wheels. If you're spinning your wheels for more than 15 minutes, give me a call. Next steps. Invite others to participate. I know we're getting towards the end of this process, but really identifying the projects is one of the most critical aspects of this. I think any of your members of your community that are responsible for putting in drainage systems, or are concerned with water, sewer, electrical, they'll want to be involved. Other stakeholders, your nursing homes, your vulnerable populations, if you're aware that a particular hazard could impact them in a special way, reach out to them and ask them, is there anything I should be aware of, or maybe make note of in the plan, or maybe we can partner together on an action. So those are good folks to talk to. So not only do you have your review copy here today, but once we get your information for tonight incorporated, we'll do one final public review period, 30 days for everyone. We'll work with Troy to make sure we get a notice out, get the word out. We'll have a copy on Warren County-HMP at JEO for folks to download as well. And that's really our last chance to make any changes, additions, whatever the case may be, on the plan before we send it to the state and to FEMA for their review and approval. I highly encourage, the last step of this process is adopting the plan by resolution. All of you, whether you're a community, a school district, water district, the county, will have to adopt the plan by resolution. We have a form that if you don't know what to put in that resolution, you can take our copy and just put the date in and sign it. So we'll send that out with the notice for public review period. I highly encourage you, if it's possible, if your board or council meets during that public review period, to adopt the plan during that time. If not, we have more time, but it's really nice to send those adoption resolutions with the plan to FEMA, so that it goes immediately into approval status, and those funds and eligibility requirements open up for you right away. So this is where ensuring that your boards or councils are aware that you attended tonight, what information you put in your plan, so that when it gets time to adopt the plan, it's hopefully that much easier. Send them to the website if they want to review any part of the plan, and if they have comments, send them my way, and I'm happy to hear them. Yeah.
Do you have a draft of the resolution?
Not with me tonight, but I can definitely send it to you following the meeting. And we'll also send a copy with, the letter when we go out for public review. Yeah.
Is that something that you could make available on the share drive?
You know what,
Just
that's,
all download it?
yes, absolutely, in fact, that's a great point. So, yeah, I'll put it on the Google Drive.
When is the public review period?
Great question. So we're anticipating, to have the plan available for public review in April. So as long as we get all the information in around the middle of March, that'll give us, 3 weeks to get the plan finalized and out for public review. So, no official set dates yet, but we're definitely hitting that April, timeframe. So then we stay on track to submit the plan in May, and between the state and FEMA, they both together have 90 days to review the plan, provide us any comments. If we need to make any changes, we make it at that time. I don't anticipate any problems though, and that gives them that August deadline. I will say there's a little asterisk there that if there's some major disaster that hits our region, it's possible it could take a little longer, but that's why I try and get it in as soon as possible so that we meet that expiration date of September. So that's the plan for the rest of this process. Other questions? And we'll also notify you when the plan is approved by FEMA. And also, if you haven't adopted the plan by that point, we'll be there to assist you following approval as well. Okay?
I did look on the Google Drive.
Yeah.
For this, and I mean, I
Couldn't find it?
Brown one was on there that I could see.
Oh,
I don't know,
okay.
nobody said no one else had. She's aware.
Has anyone else had any issues? Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Cause I just wrote all of it.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, there's our contact information. I also have a business card up there, and on the front of your package should be Kayla's contact info as well. Any questions?
You're gonna be sending us a copy of this.
I will make sure that's also on the Google Drive. I will follow up with an email too of some of these key items that we talked about by email. Anything else? Hey, I appreciate your time. I'm here to help. If you want to stick around, ask any more specific questions, otherwise feel free to go and do the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming.